to Teaching Through the Bible. Today we're going to continue our conversation about a very difficult topic, something that is a real sticking point for a number of people as they read through the Old Testament, very confusing, slavery. And so we talked last time about how basically what that is not. That is not the slavery that we think of from the earlier history of America. That is that kind, the 1700s, 1800s America, that is 100% condemned. Chapter 21, verse 16, right there, point blank, not acceptable. So we've seen what that isn't. And we've looked into a little bit about some pretty big distinctions about what's different between what we've got here and what we've got there. But now we're going to look about what is this then? And we are getting into here this what's the good works section. What should be done of Exodus. So I've been saying that Exodus, it's about this process of salvation. So this theme of Jesus saves his people for good works and judges his enemies. So we've seen a lot of like Jesus saved his people. That was the first almost half of Exodus. Jesus saved his people, but he saves them for good works. We see that in Ephesians 2. We looked at that last time as well. Ephesians 2, chapter 10 says, like, yes, you're justified before God, not by your works, but there are still good works you should do as a response to being justified. And so that's why we now have all these laws that we're going to see, all these rules, all this stuff that's coming pretty much from Exodus 20 onward. So right here in Exodus 21, some of the first laws we get have to do with servanthood, have to do with slavery. And why is that? It could be because this is where they just came from. They were slaves in Egypt, and they had cruel taskmasters. They had people who did not treat them well, did not treat them as they should have been treating them. And God's saying, okay, well, you guys aren't going to do that. You guys have to follow specific rules that ensure that you are doing things the right way, that you are treating people the way you should be treating them. And so here, and that doesn't mean that the Israelites obeyed that, because we have a ton of examples of how the Israelites were told, do this, and they said, cool, I'm going to do that. Or don't do this, and they say, I think I will do that actually. So we have lots of examples where the Israelites fail, which is why they need Jesus. Not a ton of examples about how they succeed. And this may be that God said, here's how you are to treat others who are in a lower social status as a servant. And then they didn't do that. You may think of, actually, in some ways, thinking of their social dynamic as far as those who are in charge and those who are servants. You may think in some comparisons, like someone who's a boss at work and someone who is an employee. In some situations, it can be more akin to that. Actually, it's called indentured servitude. It's a contract. It's a limited time sort of thing. It's very different, especially if, like in this case, when you have these rules that say, here's how you specifically treat other Hebrews, other Israelites. So within God's community, here's how you treat other people that are your servants within that community. So here, chapter 21, we're going to begin just by reading the sections that are about servanthood here. And as we read this, there are going to be other verses here. We'll get to some of these. Remember, this whole section, these several chapters here, it's all the book of the covenant. And so we may not hit every single particular verse, but we'll generally hit a lot of this as far as the different laws, particularly ones that might be really confusing. If there's something else that we don't touch on, you can always feel free to comment below and say, hey, I don't understand this. What's this supposed to mean, or something like that. Or if you have other thoughts on what we do talk about, again, always feel free to comment and we can talk about it. Well, we'll start in chapter 21, verse 1. Now these are the rules that you shall set before them. When you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years. And again, when we see slave, we can think servant. Okay, we want to think of this as something very different from what we're used to. When you buy a Hebrew servant, he shall serve 6 years. And the seventh, he shall go out free, for nothing. If he comes in single, he shall go out single. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out alone. But if the servant plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. Then his master shall bring him to God, and he shall bring him to the door or the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall be his servant forever. So that's like kind of ear piercing. When a man sells his daughter as a servant, she shall not go out as the male servants do. If she does not please her master, who has designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has broken faith with her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her as with a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish her food, her clothing, or her marital rights. And if he does not do these three things for her, she shall go out for nothing, without payment of money. So that's that first section there that deals with servanthood. Then we have the one that talks about how if you steal someone, if you buy someone who's stolen, your punishment is death. That's verse 16. Then we move on to verse 20. When a man strikes his servant, male or female, with a rod, and the servant dies under his hand, he shall be avenged. But if the servant survives a day or two, he is not to be avenged, for the servant is his money. And we move on down to verse 26. When a man strikes the eye of his servant, male or female, and destroys it, he shall let the servant go free because of his eye. If he knocks out the tooth of his servant, male or female, he shall let the servant go free because of his tooth. So that's not all the commands that the Bible has about servanthood. We'll see more down the road, but that's all we've got in this section. And so right here, there's just a number of things, probably just like, what on earth? What's going on here? I didn't even know that was in there. How do we explain this? The first thing to be aware of as we are looking at this is we've got to go in with this understanding, right? That the Bible is the ultimate authority. We talked about that at the very beginning of this class. If we know the Bible is the ultimate authority, then we know that right here, whatever God's telling them, we've got to accept that this is God's word. So if we come away at the end of this saying it looks like God's saying servanthood is okay, then we have to say, okay, well, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't like that, but that's what he said, so that's what it is. Or if we come away saying, all right, I don't think it's okay, then we got to have a biblical reason why we say, you know what, I get why it seems that way in this verse, but actually servanthood's not okay, and here's the biblical reason why. We cannot use I feel like that's wrong, or I am not comfortable with it, or I think that's wrong. We've got to use biblical reasoning if we're going to say actually, the servanthood stuff is not okay. But let's just look at some of the stuff that we just read. So first of all, we see it's not a permanent thing. This is basically what might happen is if someone was in poverty for some reason, then they might have to sell themselves or their children into working for someone else. And so if they do that, then they end up, that's a way for them to kind of get out of their debt or something. And it's done after 6 years. They have 6 years and the 7th year, so this is kind of patterned after the days of the week, right? 6 days of working and 1 of rest. So 6 years of working, and then they're free. They're done. Now, if we see this elsewhere in the Bible, I believe in Leviticus, if the year of Jubilee, which is every 50th year, if that comes during this time, before the 6 years is up, they're free, done. Like they just get off early. Like Jubilee is freedom of all these different people, celebration of that's pointing us to Jesus and the freedom that comes in Him. And so here, if you're looking at differences here from what you may be thinking of with servanthood, like this is a temporary thing. This is something where you've got a limited time that you're essentially contracted to work. Hey, let me work for you for 6 years and you pay me, and that might be that could be paying all up front and paying off the debt, or maybe that's paying throughout. I don't really see any specific details on exactly what that looks like, but it's essentially contracted work. And the person, if they want to, if they say, you know what, this is a great deal. I really like working for this guy. I really want to stay in this job. This is actually a pretty good situation for me. I got pretty constant work and a good job, a good way to make an income. I want to stay here because again, they got paid. Like this is not someone steals you and now you have to work and you're their property and and you're not a human and you're working for free and everything. Like it's not that. This person's getting paid. So they say, I really like this deal. This person, provides for me well, gives me a job that allows me to provide for my family. Then you can say, hey, how about we just make this like, just an official, like throughout the rest of my life, this is where I want to be, and that's something that's an option. It's not something that's required, but they can do that if they really like that job that much, which was apparently a possible thing. Thank you for watching that video. I hope that it helped you learn a little bit more about the Bible today. And if you'd like to continue to learn more about the Bible, then we have plenty of other videos on the channel. And if this has been helpful for you, then you can always let me know by subscribing to the channel. And hopefully I'll be able to continue to help you learn even more about God's Word. Thanks.